Hello again. A couple of months ago, I did a video about a young black woman in Scotland who attributed her failure to get a job to the fact that she did not have an English name. The BBC put her claim about this business on their website, and I discussed the idea at some length. Now, the BBC are doing exactly the same thing again. They clearly wish to promote the idea that black people fail to get their jobs not because they lack the necessary qualifications or went to poor universities rather than those which have a good academic reputation, but rather because of racism. The thesis is that the very possession of an African or Caribbean sounding name is enough to stop anybody even considering an applicant for a post. I give a link in the description to this video to a clip from the BBC featuring a young woman called Amice Ophelia Brown, in which she claims that young black people have to work 3 times as hard. 3 times as hard as what or whom, she does not say. Let's see what she says and try and make sense of the weird idea that having a non-English name, as she puts it, means that a job application would be thrown in the rubbish bin and not even considered. I recommend people watch this short clip. It's only 2 minutes or so, and it's quite revealing. She begins by saying there's a lot of systemic racism within the corporate world. Actually, she says a lot of. She tends rather to use glottal stops instead of terminal T's, and this combined with 1 or 2 other things might be a factor in her difficulty getting a job in a firm in the City of London, but we'll come to that in a minute. She continues, especially just from applying, like, if you have a non-English name, your application is already in the bin. It's not even going to be looked at. This is such a strange claim that I feel we should examine it in some detail. In the first place, how on earth does she know this? What grounds does she have for thinking that applications for jobs in banks, insurance companies and financial organisations in the City of London are routinely thrown in the rubbish bin and not considered? It sounds a bit mad to me, and I'll explain why. Let's imagine that I'm a high-powered executive in a firm of, say, stockbrokers or a bank in the city. I advertise a post requiring a good knowledge of economics, and an application arrives from somebody with a Chinese or Indian name who has a first from Oxford in economics. Would I really throw that application in the bin and then start looking at that of a person with a good honest English name who went to London Metropolitan instead? Why on earth would I do that? Even if I was racially prejudiced, it would be a bit mad to ignore the needs of my firm and allow my prejudice to force me to avoid any strong candidates because they had non-English names. That would be actively harming the business. It makes no sense at all. There might be another explanation though, and we'll come to it in a moment. Miss Ophelia Brown, which by the by sounds English enough to my ear, wanted an internship, and internships are like gold dust these days. There's huge competition and they're very difficult to get. She applied to 300 graduate programs and schemes for interns without receiving a favourable reply. I know white people with English names who have had the same experience, I'm afraid. Internships are highly sought after. She says, the people that do get the internships is people that went to Russell Group universities. Okay, there are 2 points here. The first is that yes, many employers do prefer to take graduates from top universities rather than the University of East London. This makes sense because if you take someone who's been to Oxford, then at least you know at once that they had 3 or 4 A levels at top grades together with a perfect set of GCSEs at A star. They're likely to be far better educated than somebody who's been attending, I don't know, London Metropolitan or Greenwich. That's the first point, and it has nothing to do with racism, systemic or otherwise. The second point is that this young woman has difficulty with the use of correct grammatical forms. I will be the first to concede that I am a fussy and pedantic person when it comes to grammar and pronunciation and so on. But actually, if you're going to be an executive in a bank, using standard English matters. Saying things like the people that get internships is people who went to Russell Group rather than the people who get internships are people may seem a minor point, but this can matter when making an application for a job. Poor grammar and syntax are things which definitely count in formal settings, and so by the by, when people are attending interviews, do things like accent. It shouldn't. It does. Someone that uses a lot of glottal stops and says water instead of water might find that that doesn't go down quite so well if you're trying to get a job at the top firm of solicitors or a merchant bank. Again, not racism, maybe class prejudice, probably is, but it matters. When this young person goes on to say that uni don't teach you how to have office chat, they don't teach you how to answer emails. Let's look at that for a minute. Leave aside that it should be uni doesn't rather than uni don't. We are being told that this woman has been to university but does not know how to answer emails. Presumably she means composing a formal business message in an email. Bearing all this in mind, I think that there is a simpler explanation for Miss Ophelia Brown's failure to get an internship other than systemic racism or employers having a prejudice against non-English names. I strongly suspect that in the first place she went to one of the newer universities, perhaps a former polytechnic, and that this certainly disadvantaged her when she was competing with graduates from Durham or Cambridge. Secondly, I would not be the least bit surprised if her applications were phrased in informal language with grammatical errors. This is fatal if you're angling for a post for which there is stiff competition. Saying people is rather than people are can be enough to tip the balance against you. She admits that she didn't know how to answer emails and had to learn this during an internship. But I have to say that most people looking for an intern would rather expect this to be a basic skill which somebody already had. I can see half a dozen reasons why this is a person who would not be able to gain a place as an intern unless she was given one purely on the grounds that she is black, which is what she says happened. I don't think that racism played any part in this, and I'm not sure why the BBC are so keen to keep publishing this idea that employers are prejudiced against people whose names do not sound English. There's far more to it than that.